This video is sponsored by Wing Technology, your ultimate flight sim hardware solution, featuring the Orion hull test, current and future configurations.
Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing very well. Today, another interview, this time with IndiaFoxtEcho. From that team, I have Dino on the line. Please say hello, Dino.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Hello, no, absolutely. Now, if you recognise Dino, that's because we've already had IndiaFoxtEcho on before for an interview. That was for their first DCS module that they're making, which is the MB339, if you remember. In fact, that actually started out as a free mod for DCS, and then they're converting that into a proper paid module, which is great because it means we can get it into the game properly. And my spies within Eagle Dynamics are telling me it's coming along very nicely and hopefully won't be too far off, which is great for us. And what I found out almost by accident is that the IndiaFoxtEcho guys are now working on another plane for DCS. It's the G91 or the G91 version R, which is great. I remember, I mean, I don't even know if a lot of people will know about this plane. This is obviously early 60s, I think, made by Fiat. And one of the only reasons I guess I know about it is because I remember as a tiny kid, my older brother had a little what we call Airfix plastic model hanging up on his ceiling, and I always remember the kind of chin intake on it. So it's one of those shapes that's stuck in my memory. I think it's great. And for me, it's right up there with the era of aircraft that I really like in the 60s. So it's perfect for me. So hence I got excited immediately. We have got our list of questions here from the valued viewers. Like you've said to me, you're not the best in the team at answering about the G91, but we'll do the best we can, I guess.
Yeah.
Anything?
I mean, if we have to go in very, very deep technical detail, maybe I'm not the best person in the team, but I know I know some things, let's say. So
Roger.
I'm confident we can reply to the questions.
Great. Anything before I kick off with the questions?
Not really. Maybe just 1 second speaking about the MB339, the project, as you said.
Please go ahead. Yeah.
Coming along very nicely, we hope, at least, or at least, well, I can say that I myself am pretty proud and happy on the quality of the module so far. We're trying to do a little bit more than what we originally planned in terms of functionality. We're not far away from, I will not give you any date, but we're not too far away from giving to Eagle Dynamics the final test version. So it's definitely coming within this year, hopefully much sooner than many people think.
Roger. Excellent. Okay. Right, let's blast through these questions and see how far we get. First of all, question 2, if you like. Are we getting the AS-20 with this module? Now, the AS-20, I think, is an air-to-air missile, isn't it?
It's an air-to-ground.
Oh, it's an air-to-ground missile, right.
But and again, this is one of the questions which I might be wrong on. The particular thing was the fact that it was it had the guidance systems in the cockpit, if I recall correctly. Yeah, the question is, so apologies if we're starting right off the bat with a maybe wrong answer, but yeah, we're planning to add that. Talked with our weapons specialist in the team. We plan to add that, although as far as we know, it has only been used for in test ranges. So it never seen any action. It was never really used by the plane in operations. I mean,
Roger.
But we plan to add that. One thing we should add, is that there's been a recent change in policy from Eagle Dynamics, and recent, I mean, maybe 6 months ago, something like that. So that nowadays, individual developers, third parties like we are not allowed to add weapons to the game. We have to go through them. So whatever we said about weapons we want to add, that's our idea. That's what we will provide them with all the necessary material and possibly a functional version of the weapon, but then it's up to them to decide what goes into game and what does not.
Roger. Is this what we would call a bullpup type weapon, kind of radio controlled, and you would control it from a joystick or something?
I think so. I think so.
Roger.
I don't know it
yeah.
that well, but I think so.
I mean, we do have precedent from the RB05 in the vegan, so I wonder if they could base it on that maybe and adapt it. But it's interesting, and it's just my type of missile I like, so I do hope it goes ahead. I think that would be great.
Yeah, it's sort of as the AGM-12. So there is a code base we should be able to start from. So we believe it's doable, and we'll try our best to include it.
Roger.
And then in the meantime, just to make sure that I didn't start with again wrong answer. Yes, indeed, it's an air-to-ground missile.
Roger. Okay, on to the next question. There are apparently many versions of the G-91R. Oh, I didn't know that. I know there was loads of versions of the G-91. I thought R was just one of those versions. But anyway, there's R1, R1A, R1B, blah, 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 blah. Which of those R versions are you planning to take on, if you know?
Okay, so at the moment, what we are sure we will, the project is, of course, very early in its very early stage, so it's difficult to say what will make it to the final cut. But at the moment, we have the PAN version, which is the aerobatic version for Freccia Tricolori, the R1B, and the R3. Once we made an announcement, we got kind of a strong feedback from the community. We should also do the R4, which is the Portuguese version. And it was sort of a hybrid using the attach points of the R3 and basically the cockpit of the R1B. So it's one thing we can do, and we're strongly considering doing.
Roger.
So that will come. Another question that we had on the same line, not from the community feedback, is why are not we doing the G-91Y version? Why like Y? And then we will not do that. It's basically a completely different, well, not completely different plane, but sort of a different plane. It was a twin-engine version of the G-91. So that's no go for the Y version, but PAN, R1B, and R3, and possibly R4.
Roger. Just purely for my historical interest, any idea why the G91 had so many versions? I mean, I scanned on Wikipedia, I saw about 50 different versions.
I think, well, it was the Cold War, I think. My 2 cents here, and I'm not saying that for sure. First thing, the project itself started like, the idea was, can NATO manufacture lightweight, cheap, mass production light attack fighter? So the general idea is to build a lot of them, and they built quite many. So then, of course, every nation and every user, so to speak, introduced their own variants and modifications, and that, I mean, it's very different than what we have in the world today. So there's much more dynamic necessity of changing things for different needs.
Roger. Next question. Is this the ones that you are making variant capable of carrying the AIM-9 Sidewinder? And if so, which variant was of the Sidewinder was it?
Well, the answer is the version that we're currently planning for sure. So the one that we mentioned before, PAN, R1B, and R3. No. There was an integration of the Sidewinder Bravo version from the Portuguese Air Force, which was not completely successful during the initial trials. The general idea is that if we do the R4 version, we will include the Sidewinder B, but most of the variants, well, basically the plane did not have the capability. Just R4 version in theory.
Roger. Okay. Yeah, it would be nice to see it, but again, you've got to be historically accurate, so that's the priority here. Okay, we'll see what happens. On the plus side, those sidewinders are so bad in DCS. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure they were in history as well. They're pretty much useless. Fine. Any plans for external gun pods, which I know some of these versions carried, and if so, which types?
Well, according to the document we have in our hands, which are quite extensive, one reason why we picked the G-91 is the fact that we have very good documentation for this aircraft. The versions that we are modeling did not have gun pods, so we will not make them.
Roger. Yeah. Okay. The next question I've just realised is nothing to do with you guys.
No.
It's why don't people make the HAL Tejas in DCS? As far as I know, there's just no developer that wants to make it, and it's probably too new to get details on it as well. I would suspect probably both those things. Yeah. What is the projected ordnance weapons that it will be able to carry?
Our general policy for all the projects that we are doing for DCS is whatever weapon was available to the real aircraft. Again, to keep and keeping in mind historical accuracy, we will try to have it in the game. And again, there is this caveat that we said before. So in the end, up to Eagle Dynamics to tell which makes the cut or not. So we had the 250 pounds bomb, 500 pounds bomb, 500 pounds napalm bomb, napalm containers, HVAR rockets, SCAR rockets, number of rocket dispenser, as we said, AS-20 and AS-30 missile. The aircraft was capable of delivering special weapons. And we got also 1,000 pounds bomb and Sidewinder Bravo we just discussed. Some version of the aircraft also had internal guns.
I was going to say, which and there were also two types of guns. I remember there was a heavy cannon one version had, and light guns. If you are having internal guns, do you know any idea which ones they're going to be?
Not right on. Not by heart. So at the risk of giving you a wrong answer, it's too big in this case for me. So I will just stick to what was historically correct for each variant.
Roger.
So I know the team is modeling them as they were in real life.
I've never actually understood the ethos of this aircraft. I heard you say it was a kind of cheap export fighter bomber, but I've never understood it. Was it based around fighter? Was it based around light ground attack? Was it based around intercept?
No, it was mostly, I believe it originally meant as a light attack. So the idea there was so basically in the 50s, NATO said, let's make a competition to create this kind of aircraft. So light attack, mass-produced jet, and the winning design was from Fiat, so it was adopted by Italy, of course, Germany in quite large numbers, and Portugal. And then, of course, it was the Cold War, so new model were available pretty soon and whatnot. So in theory, it was a project that was designed to have a much bigger number in terms of mass production, and in the end it did to some extent, but it was designed as a light attack aircraft.
Roger.
Just sheer power of the numbers.
Roger, yeah. The next question. The G-91 was designed to have robust landing gear to take off from unimproved runways, assuming that war with the Soviets would leave most large air bases inoperable. Will this be modelled in DCS in some way?
Well, as not again, I'm sorry to repeating the same answer. So definitely DCS dynamics are not my field of expertise. We do have an engineer assigned to that in the team. As far as I know, it's not completely possible to model ground interaction, ground physics as you want in DCS because they are kind of hard-coded into the simulator. So we will try our best to get the right code for the shock absorbers, suspension of the aircraft. That's what we can do from our side. Will the aircraft be able to perform like it will, like in real life from roads and whatnot? Most probably, we can't comment on that. That's mostly depending on the engine, on DCS.
Okay, let's see what happens. Fine. Next question. A bit of background, I guess. What era was the G91 from, and can you give us a bit more info on its history and when it was introduced?
Yeah, we kind of replied already a few seconds ago. So the general idea was the general project comes from a NATO requirement. So NATO decided in the 50s to get a lightweight strike fighter to be mass produced. So you might recall that at the time there were two different philosophies, in NATO. So one was to get pretty complex and very capable super aircraft, and at a certain point in those years there were design groups that said, well, we can also think of going the other way, which led to aircraft like the A4 Skyhawk. So let's make a simple aircraft, as simple as possible.
Absolutely.
So
this is a contemporary for the Skyhawk, really, isn't
yeah,
it?
yeah. So I in my mind, at least, it's basically the same philosophy. So let's try and have a competition of who makes the best design for lightweight strike fighter to be mass produced. The first flight was in 1956, and it was introduced in 1958. And most users were, all the users, the official users were Italy, Germany, and Portugal. And it also has been evaluated by the US Army, not the Air Force, the Army at the time. There was this philosophy that maybe also the Army should have some sort of jet attack capability. And so some evaluation. You can find pictures on the internet of the G91 in test US Army livery, for example, which was pretty cool, I think.
Roger. Okay. Is it going to be modelled as an interactive cockpit, and if so, to what extent?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Our philosophy for DCS is, again, all our cockpits or the projects we're working on will have fully clickable interactive cockpits, including basically everything down to the circuit breakers. So, yes.
Roger. As far as I understand, there's nothing else that's going to come out in DCS without a fully modelled cockpit. I mean, as far as I know. So, yeah. What stage is the work on the module at, and can you give us an estimate of when we're going to get it? Probably no, but just asking the question.
Well, let's start with the estimate. For sure, I'm pretty confident that it will not be out in 2021. In terms of where we are developing the 3D model at the moment. It's the main activity, although we do have already one version of the plane in the game. This is we're starting from an existing 3D model, which was modeled by one of our team members, but it's been completely revised. So we think it's going to be by far the most accurate 3D model of the G91 available. So we're adding detail to that. That's the main activity at the moment. And apart from that, we think the development should be relatively fast, but it's really unlikely that it will be ready this year.
Roger. Very good. The next question, I think the chap got a little bit confused here. Why not ask for a single dollar to buy a module like this? I think he thinks it's a free. This just happens sometimes, obviously, because no one really knows about it. He thinks it's a free mod, and he's asking why don't you charge some money? Obviously, you are, but that brings up the question: what price range will this be?
Yeah, in terms of it is of course a payware effort. In terms of price, it's gonna be So in our intent, it's going to be a high fidelity model, and it will be priced accordingly. The price will also kind of depend on the feedback we will have on the release of the MB339, but we're trying to keep it as inexpensive as possible, but it's still going to be a high-tired model.
Roger. Okay. What is the most difficult bit to be modelled on the G91 for you guys?
This is an answer I got from my system development guys, and so basically the idea that the R version was also used for reconnaissance, and so what we would like to do to have the possibility to have a recon camera system modeled. So that's listen to the coders. This seems to be the most tricky part. I would guess that also making the right flight model might be a challenge, but that was just my guess because the flight dynamics guys told me that the aircraft is very, very well documented, and we should be able to pull a pretty good flight model for this.
Roger. Just going back to that, I forgot what you called it now. The kind of camera recorder thing. Are we talking about like HUD cam or a proper not targeting pod, but you know what I mean, like a spy pod?
Yeah, it's sort of a spy pod, but yeah, that would be the idea.
That would be something new. We've had ELINT collection pods, obviously, but we've never had a spy pod, so that would actually be interesting. And one good thing about that, I mean, in DCS we fly everything on our missions, but we're always looking for some reason to use something. So, for instance, if we had a G91 with a spy pod, we could, we'd have a proper reason to use it, and we could feature it into missions, and I'm sure, not just us. So, if you can get that working, that would be a big bonus. Or if you can't get it working, even kind of screenshots that get added onto the knee port or something would just about do as well. It would just be something that can help us factor it into missions and stuff. So,
yeah, cool. Well, we're trying.
Yep, absolutely right. If the mod is received well, what are your plans for after MB339/G91? And I think we're just talking about the scope of DCS, because I know you've got all sorts of other plans in other games and stuff like that, but if we just keep it to DCS.
Yeah, for what concerns DCS, we have some plans. We cannot disclose them at the moment just because the only thing I can say, we do have a third project which is being approved by Eagle Dynamics, but that's the only thing I can say at the moment.
Can I ask if you're planning to stick just with Italy or anywhere, if you know what I'm saying, in terms of the nation of the aircraft?
In terms of what we're looking at, we try to have also... It is a difficult question to answer because in general, we're looking at everything. So, of course, being the whole team Italian, and we're also pretty close to museums, airfields, and this kind of thing. So, it's IndiaFoxtEcho is indeed slightly Italy-centric, at least for what concerns DCS, just because, as we discussed several times, if you want to do a plane for DCS, you need to have an extremely well-documented aircraft, and possibly to have physical access to the machine, which is, of course, more difficult the farther you go from Italy for us. But yeah, we're looking at different options. We're looking at different aircraft. At the moment, though, we're kind of fully working on the 339. And part of the team has started working on the G91. So that's as far as I can.
Roger.
go.
Next one is a Dino question. What is your favourite module that exists in DCS, and you're not allowed to say your own aircrafts?
Yeah. No, I go straight with the F-14
Okay.
plus super carrier combo.
Yeah, that's a pretty
Because
safe bet. Yeah.
yeah, I was born in the 70s, and I think I had like 12 years when Top Gun was screened, and you grow up with the F-14 myth, and that's a really good version of the F-14, and it was kind of my childhood dream to see such a good rendition of the aircraft.
Roger. Yep. No, fair answer. Next, is it coming with an internal gun and can it carry fuel tanks? We've already answered that, but anything to add to that?
Yeah, we looking at the notes that we took for this specific question, you see that we had a little bit more detail than the previous answer that we got. So there is I got from the team that the split between the different version and machine guns. So the R1B had the 2 external fuel tanks and 4 20.7 millimeters Browning M3 machine guns. Had 3 so R1B had 2 external fuel tanks and 2 30 millimeters DEFA M552 cannons with 2 additional underwing points, hard points, and the PAN is the aerobatic version. So, well, you can tell the aerobatic version because the nose was slightly different. So the G-91 has placed at least a provision for a camera, a recon camera in the nose of the aircraft. And whereas the Frecce Tricolore version had a conical nose. So that is pretty much it. Speaking about the R4, the Portuguese version, so it was basically the same of the R1B, but with the pylon numbers, the pylon of the R3, so it had 4 pylons instead of 2. And the same guns of their 1B.
Roger, very good. I've just found the aerobatic version. It's they were blue as well, weren't they? Yes, they were blue. And yeah, that's cool. And I can see the kind of conical nose and stuff like that. Nice, very nice. I mean, in terms of marketing the module and all that stuff that needs doing, considering its contemporaries, 50s and let's say 50s and 60s, what's special about this compared with the others? What's its selling point, if you were a marketing guy?
Well, truth to be told, I'm an engineering guy, so
yeah, I heard that. You mean
it's difficult to sometimes to pitch the things as well as as they do. But in reality, it was kind of a conventional light attack aircraft. So the key point, as we said, was that one of the design philosophies at the time in NATO were, can we do, we want to make very simple, very cost-effective, mass-produced aircraft. And again, it's the same philosophy of the A4, which is kind of a reaction to some designs coming from NATO, which were very, I wouldn't say intricate, but definitely complex machines, and in some cases had difficulties in maintenance, or it was just production could not cope with the numbers that might come from the Russian bloc. So the selling point at the time was it's easy to produce, inexpensive, very simple aircraft. And the design philosophy was, if it's not there, it will not break. So to keep it as simple as possible.
Yeah.
And it was very effective in that respect.
Yeah, good idea. Okay. Regards Fiat being an aerospace manufacturer, was this the only plane they made, or did Fiat make other aircraft throughout history?
Yeah, in terms of, well, of course, World War II buffs
Yep.
can probably remember that Fiat manufactured a number of fighters in World War II and before that, and also quite relatively popular, at least, training aircraft. It was not the first jet that Fiat manufactured. Actually, Fiat built before that the G80, which was basically just a prototype, and it was the first jet designed and built in Italy. So basically, the G91 was the first successful one, and practically the only jet they manufactured in terms of their own design. Then the Fiat plant made a number of manufactured a number of the aircraft as a third-party manufacturer under license, including, I think, the F-86. So the F-86K, you recall the one
Yep.
with the
Absolutely.
the dome nose, and pretty big number of F-104. With, you might call also Italy at its own specific version of the Starfighter. So that was the bulk of the production of the Fiat Aerospace.
Okay. Regards the recon camera, is it in the nose, on the front of the nose?
Yeah, it was. I don't recall by heart if there were special recon cameras as underwing pylons too. But yeah, the R version was for reconnaissance.
Ah, right. Didn't realise. Okay. Right, very good. What engine does it have? Tell us a bit about the engine, the power of the engine, maybe a bit about general performance.
Yeah, the engine itself was a Bristol Siddeley Orpheus 803 turbojet. The thrust was 5,000 pounds, so pretty good performance for the time, considering the size and the weight of the jet.
Roger. And this is not an afterburning jet, not a supersonic aircraft. Kind of lower transonic, I think it was, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah. I think it's well, it was 550 knots was the top speed for the aircraft.
Roger.
So,
Roger.
but definitely not supersonic. You can easily tell that from the shape of the aircraft.
Yeah, yeah. And the next one is the top speed we've talked about and the turn rate. I don't know what the turn rate, but it's almost certainly going to be terrible looking at those wings. Would you agree this is definitely not a dogfighter?
It was not. It was not. As far as we know, it was more or less the same as the MiG-15.
Oh, wow.
Roll rate was better though, but yeah, it was not the most agile aircraft of the era for sure.
It'd be interesting seeing it compared with something like a MiG-15 or a Sabre, because they're, at least in DCS anyway, they're actually pretty good. Even if you put them up against, if you can manage your energy well, put them up against modern fighters, they can actually do pretty well. Okay, where are we? This next one I don't understand. On which DCS aircraft will this jet be modelled around? Does that make sense to you?
To a certain point, when we received your question, we interpreted that on the coding side. So, in terms of coding, of course, we largely base what we're doing on the MB339. They're very different aircraft, of course, but we have tried to build the MB339 in terms of a system simulation, at least, in such a way that we can easily configure that for other aircraft. So That's the spin we got for this question. We think the development time will be quite short, or at least for DCS standards, just because we have been building the code for MB329 so that we can kind of adapt it to similar system. And in some way, the G91 was even simpler than the MB339, at least for some system functionality.
So. The next question is, why? Why did we go for the G91? What was your decision based on?
Well, I mentioned before that we kind of started from an existing G91 model, and that is because within the IndiaFoxtEcho team there are also members that are also part of the SimSkunkWorks team. Maybe they're not super well known for the DCS community, but they're very well respected team for flight simulator development. And so we started playing together on different models we had in our hands, and we felt the G91 was a good model to make because we could take the existing 3D model and very easily add basically everything that was missing to the aircraft. Another big point for the G91 is that we have a lot of excellent documentation for that. We can have access to the historical archive of Fiat Aviazione, the factory that made that, and there are some aircraft you can have access to. So again, speaking about DCS, it's essential that you have extremely good documentation, because otherwise it's basically impossible to pull a decent version of whatever aircraft you're doing. There are a number of things that we think are there are a number of reasons why we think the G91 is probably the best product we can do. So
Roger. Okay.
Moving forward.
I'm going to skip over the next one because we've already covered about yourself and the team in the MB339 video, and we'll just be repeating ourselves. The next one was there a civilian version for any reason of the G91? Or a non-military, it would be a better way of saying.
Not that we... with one exception.
I suppose there's...
It is the fact that there is a private company, it's not probably a company, it's an association which is working to restore, together with the Italian Air Force, they're working to restore one to flight condition for 2022.
Wow.
So that's going to be a civilian G91.
Yeah. Wow, okay, that would be exciting if we got to see that at the air shows, although it'll probably only stay in Italy, but okay, very good. Some figures. Do you know the takeoff and landing speeds when loaded and empty?
Yeah, we got that from, of course, I couldn't remember the numbers by heart, so we got notes from our flight modeling team, and the takeoff speed was 135 knots in clean configuration, and about 150 when fully loaded. Landing speed was 128 for clean configuration and 140 if it was fully loaded. So
right. Sounds similar to a Sabre, maybe 10 knots added onto a Sabre.
Yeah, it's more or less, yeah. But again, we have full flight manuals, we have performance manual. That's again, documentation is paramount, and we do have a lot of documentation for G91.
Okay, for this aircraft, did you actually have an example, a physical metal example to go and look at, and did you have any pilots to speak to?
Yeah, we do. There are a number of G91 aircraft in Italy in museums we can have access to. Uh, it starts to be a slightly older aircraft, so that yeah, we do have pilots that can provide some feedback. The sad reality is that sometimes they don't remember uh, some some some
Huh.
some some details because the aircraft has been not in operation. I don't recall the exact year of retirement, but it's surely more than 20 years now. And so, time flies, and sometimes I have to say that DCS fans as I'm sure you know, they're
Mm-hmm.
extremely picky,
Yes, they are.
and sometimes they ask for details that even if they were just in front of the pilot's eyes, they're not things that the pilots usually remember or
Hmm.
notice. So it's something that we often face developing aircraft on different platforms. So.
Roger. Okay. Any idea if any of the versions had an RWR and or countermeasures?
No, no, we're talking about extremely simple machines.
Yeah.
As far as we know, no RWR, no countermeasures.
And no air-to-air or air-to-ground radar in any of the versions.
Exactly.
Roger. The next one I don't understand. It says, where's the G-91R code coming from? Do you think it means computer code or the G or
No,
the,
I
the
think I think the I think the it's meaning just G91. It's not like F86. No.
right? What is
So
it? Is it G for Gina, or is it, or what is it?
well, the name became the aircraft became known as Gina, just short,
Mm.
typical Italian name, sort nickname actually. But in reality, you will see many aircraft in Italian aviation history that are named with G, like for example, the G222,
Hmm.
which became the T27J transport aircraft. And that's actually coming from the name of the main designer. So that's like MB339 is Macchi, the company,
Hmm.
Bazzocchi, the lead engineer. 339 is the progressive model. So G stands for Giuseppe Gabrielli, which was the designer of the aircraft. 91, of course, it was 91st design of his of Fiat design office, and R was identifying the recon role because of the camera we talked about.
That's interesting. The only people I know that do it like that were the Soviets with Sukhoi and Mig, whoever Mig was, I've forgotten, and Tubalov and stuff like that. They had the name of the lead designer, didn't they? But okay, interesting.
Yeah, there are also different companies, but yeah, that's basically it. You will see, for example, for Air Macchi, to speak about one thing we know, MB326, so Macchi Bazzocchi 326, Macchi Bazzocchi 339, then, and if you look at the latest models like M346, they still retain the progressive number, but there's no
Mm,
B in the name. So.
okay. Okay. Where was the jet produced, if we know, and when did they go out of service?
Well, all the aircraft are out of service now. I don't recall the exact date of retirement, which was I think in the mid 90s. Uh, they were most of them, or the vast majority of them, was manufactured in Turin, Italy, where Fiat Aviazione was based. But there were almost 300 aircraft were also manufactured under license by Dornier in Western Germany.
Ah,
Considering that Luftwaffe had more than 500
mm-hmm.
G91s, so like 3 out of 5 German aircraft were actually were manufactured actually in Germany. So
Interesting. Okay. Are you planning a full damage model for the
yeah,
I mean,
Yeah, we are. It's gonna be the same level of detail of what we're doing for the MB339. So basically, uh, we're going for a full damage model, including system model, and the possibility to act to like circuit breakers, for example, to kind of compensate for the damage model, for the damage that you might incur.
very good. Very
Yeah.
good. Okay, and to round us off, are there any interesting stories around this aircraft that you know of?
Well, it's there are some, but again, sometimes best. So it's while technically it's an extremely well documented aircraft, historically in terms of operational history, there are not many stories, well, at least interesting stories, because the fact was that the aircraft, most of the aircraft did not see
Yep.
any real action, except the Portuguese one. The Portuguese ones were used on the Guinea-Bissau War of Independence, and the most interesting story we picked was the fact that this, at a certain point, MiG-17s were creating problems to the F-86. And so the story we've been told is that the F-86, there were pressure from the U.S. government to kind of withdraw the F-86 because they were not performing as well as they hoped. And so at a certain point, we were told that G-91 was kind of forced to try and become a dogfighter versus the MiG-17. But again, this is kind of so if you go and check for historical evidence for this kind of story, it's not very solid. But still, it's kind of interesting to see that even if a lot of people associate the G-91 like to Italy, actually it was used a lot by Germany too, and it was actually used in real war by the Portuguese.
Roger. Well, as soon as we get our hands on it, it sounds like we'll have to go and reenact at least the Portuguese conflict as much as we can. Anyway, okay, Gino. Okay, Dino. Thank you very much for that. Short, sweet, good, informative, exactly what we want in terms of, am I looking forward to it? Yes, because it's exactly the area I like, and I like the way it looks. I think it looks awesome, and it's going to fit in perfectly, especially if we get that recon ability. I think that's going to be awesome. So I shall look forward to it. I know it's a fair distance off yet, but that's fine. I can wait. Any final thoughts before we sign off?
Well, again, just my apologies for some answers which might be a slightly, very slightly, I hope, not so firm as some people wanted, just because, again, I'm kind of a spokesperson for the team, but I'm not the best and most qualified G-91 expert we have on board. And rest assured, we do have very, very skilled and knowledgeable people for this type of aircraft in the team. And again, thanks a lot for this interview and for your time. It's much appreciated. It's great to see there's such big interest for our projects and for G91 in particular, because as you said, many people don't know this specific model. But it's also kind of, I think, cool for the simulations to be able to have lesser known models flying, at least virtually.
Yeah, well, it brings back history. This is, apart from that one that you know those guys are actually putting back in the air, that almost no one's going to be able to see in the world this way. anyone can have access to what is a good historical reenactment of this aircraft, bringing it back from more or less the grave. So yeah, this is why I'm into it. All this stuff.
Speaking about the guy that is restoring the aircraft, we have some contacts with him. Actually, I had the chance to fly with him on the MB326, which was super cool. And so we hope access to the flying aircraft during development. So that would be a major plus. And hopefully we can get some feedback directly from the pilots that will fly it. So.
Roger. Lovely. Dino, thank you very much. And I'll speak to you whenever I've got something to speak to you again about. Otherwise, thanks a lot, and I'll see you later.
Thank you. Thank you.
Cheers.